We're recording. Hi, welcome to the Knitting Annie podcast. I am your host, Knitting Annie. This is episode 7, and today is Sunday, February 22nd. Right? Right, just looked at my notes. I am coming to you from the floor of my fiber room. I am nestled in between bags of fiber. I've got a raw fleece behind me. Don't know if you could see that very well. I have yarn and many things to show you today. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for the incredible amount of feedback I got on the last episode. I just couldn't believe how many people were so eager to know more about fiber and excited that I was actually talking about it, so that's pretty cool. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching and your comments, everybody who's reached out, and welcome to new viewers. I am so sorry that I missed last week's podcast. I told myself when I first started doing this that I wasn't going to miss any weeks, but life happens and I'm here now. So thank you for joining me. I have some notes here because there's a lot I want to cover. I don't want to go as long as I did last time. I have a really crappy Wi-Fi connection and my computer is really old. So that combined makes for an incredibly long upload time. It must have taken me 6 hours to get the video uploaded the last time we chatted. So hopefully it won't happen like that this time. Anywho, oh, I'm kind of nervous again. I wasn't really nervous the last one, but I also have no Baileys this time. This is just water. And this is in another one of the cups that Bill's wife made for me. I talked about that last time. But anywho, I'm also going to try not to say anywho or super as much as I did last time. We'll see if that happens. So let's read the notes and tell you who I am. I am Knitting Annie on Instagram. I have a website called knittingannie.com where you can see show notes from this episode and all the others. And then if ever I want to write about something, that's on there too. I am also called the Knitting Annie on Ravelry. And exciting news, I started a Ravelry group. Some of you guys have already joined. Thank you so much. There is an introductions thread. So please join the group. Please introduce yourselves. Feel free to start threads. I want to meet you guys and talk about things other than myself. So please let me know about you. I'm going to start a thread soon about the Connecticut Sheep and Wool Festival to see if there's anybody in New England who's going to be going, because maybe we can meet up. That would be pretty cool. And you know, feel free to chat. So whatever you want to talk about, put it on there. We'll talk about it. And thank you. Thank you so much for all the comments. I received so many private messages on Instagram, so many comments on the blog, as well as comments on the YouTube channel. Oh yeah, there's a YouTube channel too. You can subscribe to not videos. You can subscribe to people who have their own channel on YouTube. And when you do that, it's pretty cool, especially if you have a smartphone, because it alerts you to when they update. So I get alerts every time Tilly Trout updates and Knit All the Things and gosh, so many different people, Pink Hair Girl and everyone else that I watch that I love so much. So hello to you guys if you are also watching, and I look forward to seeing your episodes soon. What have I been up to? I'll just tell you really quick and then we'll get into the prize winner for the knitting game that we played on Instagram. So we had Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to those of you who enjoy it. Brad and I don't really celebrate it. We haven't really been big into that holiday, and we don't really give gifts a lot. But I came home to a couple dozen red roses and some perfume. And I don't know if you guys remember, but on one of the earlier podcasts, I talked about how good this bag smelled that my aunt gave me. And inside of it was she had been storing perfume in the bag, and I asked her what it was, and she told me, and I thought it was really great smelling. So Brad actually surprised me with a bottle of that perfume, which is so cool. So I was thinking that I could spray more of my knitting bags with it because I loved it so much in the knitting bag. I'm going to use it too, but for some reason having it in my knitting bag and smelling the fragrance was really cool. So maybe I'll substitute super for cool this episode. I don't know. It's kind of awkward to do this again after taking a 2-week break, so please bear with me if I'm a little bit weird. I'm also sitting on the floor, which is kind of odd. I probably don't do that all that often. So that's what's been going on. We had more snow yesterday. This has been an insane winter so far. It was unseasonably warm, and then we just continue to get snow. So yesterday I think we got close to another foot. Just crazy, this big, wet, sloppy snow. And Brad and I went out for a walk today to try and see if I can get any good pictures of it, but it was just wet and sloppy and really hard to convey how much snow we got. And then for those of you who follow me on Instagram, you saw the new visitor that I had to my feeder. All of a sudden, Brad and I came back in from the walk, and I don't know what I was doing. I think I was making some tea or something, and he was in the other room, and the dog started barking like a hole in the ground opened up, and like a creature from I don't know where just came out of the ground, and they were alerting us that the end was coming and we had to get out of the house. I don't know. It was like the most alarming bark I've ever heard them make. So I run to the back door and to the window there, and what do I see but a possum eating the remnants of the seeds that were falling from our bird feeders. It was just bizarre to see a possum during the daytime, but I started reading about them, and I think that he must have been really hungry because they don't generally come out in the daytime. So I'm glad we gave him a meal. I like possums. He was really cute, but the dogs went berserk. So that's what I've been up to. The photo challenge that I had on Instagram for the first 2 weeks. Oh, I'm stuttering. I'm nervous now. Okay, do over. Oh, P.S. before I get into that, can one of you guys that is a podcaster please give me a suggestion as to what video editing software or hardware or something I can buy? Because during moments of like a freak out or when I stutter, I would love to just like cut that right out of the video. And if you guys know how I can do that, or how I can show maybe another video and kind of like splice them together, you know, not just sitting in front of you guys, but if I want to show you the possum and then I want to come back to this, please, if you know of any video software, please, please, please let me know. Thank you. Okay, moving on. I had I had a photo challenge on Instagram, and it was for 14 days, and I plan on doing them more in the future. So if you missed out on that one, please join me for a future challenge. These are, oh, that is super crinkly. Oh, I said super. All right, I'll calm down. Stop being critical, Annie. No more critical, Annie. Yarn makes everything better. This is Yarns to Inspire. I showed you guys this yarn the last episode. This is a locally made yarn here in Connecticut. The winner is also getting these addies and some stitch markers that I made. The funny thing is, when I do these contests, or as I've done them so far, the winner has been a random winner. So I go to random.org and I put in a value and I get this random number, and then I go on Instagram and with my hashtag I count down to where, you know, the winner is. So the funny thing is, I had 2 people comment on my pictures, when are you going to do the drawing? Because the contest is over, when are you going to do it? One of those people that commented happened to be the winner. So congratulations to Wehowski on Instagram. You are the winner of the prize. So I will contact you on there and we'll hook up and I'll send this to you. Congratulations. Thank you so much for, you know, entering the contest and entering all of your photos. And thank you so much to everyone else who played along. I really enjoyed seeing your pictures and getting to know you guys through Instagram. I made a lot more contacts that way too, which was really fun. So the next giveaway we will have, in previous podcasts, I told you about my friend Ellen in Sweden. I'm spinning some Gotland fiber for her, and she sent me something for you guys for another giveaway. So the way I thought about doing this to make it a little bit different than the last giveaways I've done, it's going to be in the Instagram group, the Knitting Annie podcast group. And in order to win, you're going to visit Ellen's shop on Etsy. I'll have that link both in the show notes here as well as in a thread I make on the Ravelry group. So visit Ellen's shop, favorite something, and say why you would like to win the little parcel of fleece. So I'll show you the fleece now. I'll try not to make too much noise for you guys. It's a little parcel of scoured organic fleece. And it's called Fennelsfor. She said that the F-A-R at the end is pronounced more like for, like when you are alerting someone in golf. So hopefully I said that a little bit better than I said the Varmlandsfor last time. So this is Fennelsfor. It's a Swedish fine wool. It's a conservation breed. It's not at risk though. It's a Swedish native breed. Fennelsfor, internationally called Swedish fine wool, is a friendly breed where individuals often get tame. It's quite commonly used in production as the breed has high fertility, produces good meat, wool, and pelts. So you're getting a little parcel of that. Trying to see what else she might have included in that. Not too much, but if I have anything else or she wants to add anything, we'll do that in the Ravelry group. And it's a 1 ounce parcel. I love how everything that came to me from her was in these little packages. And I'll just show it to you. It's a real treat to be able to spin something that is native to another country. I have some of it down here as well, but you can get an idea of what it looks like. It's a very pretty brown color. It's very soft. It doesn't have a lot of VM in there. So for those of you who don't know what VM is veggie matter or vegetative matter, which is what the sheep lives in, you know. There's all kinds of fibers around that he eats. There's a little bit of hay to be expected in raw fleece, but really there's not much at all in here. And let's see if I can pull out some of it. Wow, it's really nice. This is what the staple looks like. Very strong. Smells good. I like whatever it is she's washing it with. And this will be for the prize winner. If you want to play along and you don't spin wool and have no use for raw fleece, you can still play along in the group. Just let me know that you're not a spinner. And if you happen to win, I will spin this for you and send you the yarn as opposed to the raw material. So I'll put that away. I'll talk more in another episode about the other fleeces that Ellen sent me. But I'll put that aside and we'll talk about that fleece more in the Ravelry thread. I have on my list to talk with you about the socks that I'm working on, but I didn't really knit them so much more than I did last time. So I'm not going to show you them this week. I'm actually not going to show you any knitting. So if you only come to my podcast to see the knitting, I'll see you next time. You can, watch this another time or go to the next podcast. But thank you for joining me if that's the case. If not, and you want to hang around for some fiber talk, that's why I'm sitting in this pile of fiber. I'm going to show you a couple things that I've spun. We'll talk about fleece a little bit. Last time, Alex, what's your name on Instagram? I can't remember. I'll shout you out in the notes though. Hi, Alex. He said he wanted to know more about CVM or wanted me to talk about it a little bit more. I'll do that in another episode. My friend Rebecca, who lives in New Jersey, has this gorgeous sheep farm, rolling acres, and she has predominantly Navajo churro, which I have some beside me, not from Rebecca, but we'll talk about Navajo churro. She has CVM, she has Jacob sheep, and a couple BFLUs, I think. And at some point, I hope, and I haven't even asked her yet, but hopefully she'll say yes, I'll do a podcast from her farm, and I can tell you more about those breeds while we're there, and you can see some of the sheep. And hopefully I'll have some editing software in order so that I can make it cool and not choppy. So we'll talk about that more in another episode. I've also reached out to a couple local farmers to see if I could meet with them in the summertime to film a podcast with them. And they said yes, so that'll be really fun. There's an alpaca farm with my friend Rose in New Jersey, and there is another sheep farm in Long Island that I want to visit. And everybody is really receptive and happy to have me come over, so I think that's really cool. Also, in other news, Brad wants to start playing around with dyeing yarn. His intention is to dye yarn for me to knit probably for him, but I don't know. I think it's all of this talk of wool and my podcast and having all of my yarn and wool and everything all over the house, I think has inspired him to want to paint some yarn that I can knit with, which is pretty fun. Brad is very artistic. He's a painter, and I have some of his paintings to show you guys, if you don't mind. When we moved here, he got into this kick, and probably because of me, because he asked me one day, well, what do you want me to paint for you? And I said, I want a chicken, and I want a picture of Nellie. So Nellie was my favorite chicken when we had our little farm. She was a barred rock, and she was just the most miraculous bird you could ever meet. I got her from a farmer who was putting her out basically to kill her with, you know, the intention of just giving her away. He didn't care if she went to the soup pot because she stopped laying eggs. So I got Nellie, and I decided to quarantine her away from all of the other chickens. And within about 2 weeks, Nellie started laying eggs again. And after that, she was actually my #1 egg producer. So even though she was a few years old and the farmer wanted to get rid of her, she ended up laying eggs for me and being the most personable, friendly bird you ever wanted to meet. And she lived for another couple of years after that, and then ended up dying from what we think was cancer, which was a very, very sad day for me. And I think I cried for 2 weeks. And if I talk about it for too much now, I could actually cry. Brad and I had a little ceremony for her. We buried her, and I loved her so much. I could tell so many stories about Nellie, but I won't. It's like, you know, on Facebook and social media, you love your pets so much, and you want everyone to like know them and love them, and you post pictures of them or you tell stories, and it just doesn't really translate. It's just not the same. So anyway, I'll show you what Nellie looked like. Brad painted this from a picture of Nellie, and this is this is her personality. Isn't that so cool? She had such an attitude, Nellie. And this was a picture that I took where I was trying to just take a really pretty landscape kind of a shot, and I was close to the ground, and Nellie just came over and stuck her face right in the lens. So I got this picture of her instead, and Brad just made the perfect painting. And this is oil paint, and we usually have this hung up in the house. This is in our living room. This is another painting that he made for me that we have hanging up in our kitchen. And this is a miniature version of a much larger painting that he made. The same exact painting, but this is the smaller version. And this is another chicken. I think the color on camera is not really true to the color in person, because in person this is much more like a buttercup yellow and not this like big neon yellow. And this picture is hanging also in our living room. It's a female cardinal that he made. I hope he doesn't get embarrassed that I'm showing him all these pictures. I'll try and bring that closer. You can see some of the detail. So pretty. We really love birds. See if I can put that down without damaging it. And this is a little owl. He's peeping around the corner. So cute. And I think I have one more. So it's not a bird, but it is an animal. It's a baby cow. Isn't that so cute? We don't have this hanging up yet, but we really should. Oh my god, I love him. Little baby moo. So those are some of Brad's paintings, and hopefully he'll dye some yarn for me. I think I'm going to go online and order some sock yarn. I don't really have anything that I'd want him to dye that I have here. So I think I'm going to get maybe some superwash sock yarn, maybe some with sparkles, and I'll show you his results. Okay. So, oh, I want to show you the yarn that I finished and spun for the farmer. I was spinning some alpaca for a lady, and she sent me the alpaca, and I was to dye it and process it and spin it for her. And I haven't washed it yet, so we're not getting the full bloom. After you spin yarn, this is the yarn that you guys saw last time on the Nitty Naughty. After you spin it, it's not really as fluffy as it could be, And most of you who are familiar with blocking wool know that once you get it wet, it changes, and yarn does the same thing. So once I wash this and get it wet, it's going to be fuzzier than it is now, and it's not going to be as tight looking. And I mixed in here some dyed silks, different types of silks. There's some sheep wool in here, and some sparkly Angelina, and some sparkly Firestar, which is nylon. So you saw this one, and then there is this yarn. I wish you could see the real colors of this. You're definitely not seeing the true color. You see more blue in person than you do the green. And if I open it up, you'll see more. A lot of new spinners are told after they set their yarn, so after you spin it and after you ply it, maybe you leave it as a single, maybe you don't, you wet it. I like to use, depending on the fiber, different methods. So usually I'll use a hot water and some fiber rinse. I like the Unicorn products. And then I kind of squeeze out the water. I don't wring it out. And I lay it between a cotton bath towel and I smush it a little bit, and then I just give it a quick snap and I set it to dry. I just hang it on something. Sometimes new spinners, maybe even experienced spinners, are told to weigh the yarn. Sometimes people will use coat hangers and soup cans and things like that to make the yarn really stretch out. And I think that when you're first learning how to spin, oftentimes you're not as familiar of balanced yarn, well-balanced yarn. A well-balanced yarn, when you take it off of the niddy noddy, shouldn't kink up on itself. So you can see that this isn't doing that. That means that the ratio of twist between the plies was, what's the best way to word this? I probably should have looked up an explanation for you guys before I tried to think of it out of my head. But the twist in one direction matched up with a twist in the other direction, and how tight or loose it's plied does make a difference in order for that twist to kind of counteract itself so that it doesn't continue to kink. And that's what this is doing. If you have to weigh your yarn in order to get the kink out, it's not a good thing, because once you, like let's say you get the kink out and the yarn looks fine and you knit something with it, once you wash that garment, it's gonna affect the way the finished garment moves, and it might like shrivel up on one side because of the kink. It might not lay right. So you don't want to do that with your yarn. You want to practice enough so that your yarn is well balanced. And I kind of wanted to show you this just as an example. This is a yarn from when I was first spinning, and I dyed it with Kool-Aid, and we've talked about that. I don't encourage necessarily dyeing with food products, you know, as a business practice. I think that it's a good way to learn how to dye wool. I think it's a good way to teach children, but I don't necessarily like that for stuff that you're going to be selling, or products, finished products from what you knit from that you're going to be selling later on. But this is some yarn that I made when I first started spinning. This is Navajo churro, and I'm going to show you some of that in a little while too. This was from Rebecca's farm, my friend in New Jersey, and I did this as a single, and I dyed it after with some Kool-Aid. But see how kinky it is, and see how, I wonder if I can get one strand to really show you how it's like way overly kinky in some sections. So, no, maybe I can't get it to get really close. But some of these strands of yarn are so twisted that it's like twisted and twisted and twisted on top of itself. It's overspun in some areas and underspun in others. This would look a lot better if I plied it, because it wouldn't be so energized. But I really don't plan on doing anything with it. It's just kind of something I've been hanging on to. It's very coarse, and because it's so energized, see how it's kind of just kinked up and made this big knot on itself? If I were to weigh this and straighten it out, it wouldn't be good to use in the long run. See this one? See how overspun these sections are? It's just so kinky on top of itself. And I can pull it out, but it goes right back. So the more practice you do, you get yarn that looks like this, and then eventually you'll have yarn that looks like this. So keep it up. So this is some yarn I just made. And I want to show you as well a new fleece that I got. This is Navajo churro. Navajo churro, we'll talk about more another time. It's a really fascinating breed. And for those of you who do eat meat, it's a lovely sheep meat to eat as well. It doesn't have a big gamey flavor. It's got a very mild flavor. As far as its coat, it's really known for being, it's been intended for weaving. Wow, I can't really articulate properly. So a lot of the people who had spun Navajo churro in the past, it's a very old breed, used it for weaving. And they use it for textiles like rugs and outerwear garments and things like that. It doesn't have a lot of crimp in the fleece. So the fleece itself, and you know what? I'll open up this bag. I happen to have it right next to me. The fleece itself does not really have much crimp, which means in the locks, it's not really kinky. It doesn't look like those little zigzags. I have some other fleece next to me. I'll show you for example. So this has a lot of crimp and it's very curly. So see how springy that is? This is BFL. Navajo churro doesn't really have that at all. It's like very, very straight. It's a dual coated breed. So you have this outer coat, and then you can't really see down here. There is some of the undercoat there, but I'll show you. This is some of the undercoat. The outer coat is generally more coarse. It's very much like hair. And then the undercoat is very soft. Well, in relation to the outer coat, at least. This is a lamb's fleece. I'll turn it to the side so you can see it better. It's actually white and black. It's hard to tell because you see the lanolin there. Oh, it smells so good. So this did come from a lamb, so it's a little bit softer than an adult fleece. And when you make a yarn with this, it kind of makes a yarn like alpaca in the sense that there's a lot of drape to it and not a lot of memory. I'll take some more of it out of here so you can see. I'm not afraid of raw fleece. I know sometimes people talk about it and they say, oh, that came off of a dirty farm animal and you're going to get some disease. I've been working with fleece for a while now, and I'm happy to report, knock on wood, that I'm okay. So this did come right off the animal. There's not a heck of a lot of lanolin in this. Navajo churro is a lower lanolin breed. That being said, it still smells lovely. The farmer did a great job of skirting this. So skirting means that when she took the fleece off of the animal, she took away any of the parts that were, first of all, second cuts. So that's like a second pass that whoever was shearing went through, and maybe they cut this off initially and then they went back and there was maybe an inch left on the animal and they cut another inch off right below that. That's considered a second cut. So when you skirt, you do all of these things. You take away the breech wool, you take away the leg wool, anything that isn't really desirable for a spinner, and that may go into a seconds bin where you can maybe take that fleece and do something with it. But oftentimes, oh, we have fiber down. Oftentimes the farmer will discard that or put that into a compost or a mulch or something, and then just sell what's desirable, which is generally the top saddle portion of the animal. But a lot of it's really usable. This has some really dark sections and some really light sections. And I'm finding that the dark bits are softer. So I don't know what that means, but that's pretty interesting. And what I did was to just try some of it out, I got the locks. Let's grab one again. And I did what I showed you last time as far as flicking it. So I got my dog slicker brush and I kind of slicked one side, and I got the other side and I slicked that, and I just opened it up and I spun it in the grease, which means I didn't wash it, onto one of my spinning wheels. And I made this very cool rustic looking yarn. This is a 2-ply. I was just really doing it more so as a trial sample to see what kind of yarn this fleece would produce. And then just before I did this podcast, I washed it. So I'll open it up, you can see it better. I spun the outer coat and the inner coat together. Some people will separate them to make two very distinct different yarns, almost like Icelandic wool. That sheep is also dual coated. And I washed this with some Unicorn Power Scour. And then I actually dried it in front of one of my heaters. And I was careful to not scorch it. Wool doesn't really burn like anything else. If you ever try and burn a pile of wool, it doesn't really do that. It just kind of smolders. And I'm really happy with it. I got this from a gal named Kim that I met in one of the Facebook groups I belong to. And I will be talking more with Kim as well about her animals, and I'll tell you more about her farm in another episode as well. So that's the Navajo churro. It came out really nice, I think. It's not that soft. I'm not quite sure what I will, do with it, but we'll see. Okay, so that is away. The next thing I wanted to kind of make you guys, I don't want to say aware of, but maybe we can talk for a minute about where your yarn is actually coming from. And where do all of these yarn manufacturers get their wool from, and where is it spun? I'm not really going to answer it. It's just a question that I'm posing out there to maybe get your, get your gears turning about that and thinking about where you're actually getting your wool from. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be a yarn snob. I have, as I look to my left here, every kind of brand, every kind of yarn here. But there is something to be said for knowing the animal that the wool came from and getting it spun. And even if you don't spin and you don't plan on spinning, you could still experience that. If you go to a fiber festival, or even if you find a local farm, there's a lot to be said for Googling sheep breeder associations in your state if you're in the United States. I'm not quite sure how you go about that in other countries, but the internet's a wonderful thing. Or if you go to the fiber festivals and you pick out raw fleece that you like, or even online, there's many groups. There's a Facebook group for raw fleece. And a lot of farmers, when they sell their raw fleece, will show you the animal it came from. And some people, like my friend Ellen in Sweden, will actually tell you a little bit about that animal. There are also different CSAs where you can actually sponsor a sheep. And I know there's a few states in the United States doing it. But it's, it's kind of funny because you'll pay for this sponsorship and then they send you a postcard with the picture of the sheep on it, and you, by paying for this sheep, reserve that fleece. So that's kind of fun. So anyway, if you want to experience what that's like, you can buy a raw fleece and send it to a mill. In Connecticut, I'm very fortunate. There's actually, I think, two, maybe three. Two that I know of, mills that I can drive to and have some of my fleece made into yarn or roving, and that's part of what's behind me right now. So I found this mill in Connecticut, and I took to him, I want to say 5 or 6 fleeces. When you bring fleece to a mill, or send fleece to a mill, you want to send them fleece that has a strong staple, something that's a sturdy fiber. So if you have a very fine wool, you don't want to necessarily send that to most mills because their process will break apart the fiber itself, and you'll get something called neps that we've talked about before inside the fleece. So I brought this mill a few different fleeces, and I'll show you a couple of them. This is a fleece that I got at the Connecticut Sheep and Wool Festival last year, and it says it's 212 yards of roving. This was a Border Leicester mix sheep, and I met this lady and she told me all about her sheep, and I bought this fleece, and this is what the roving looks like. Not much VM in there. I'm pretty careful when I buy fleece to not buy something that has a lot of particles in there because I don't really want to fight with it. Life is too short for crappy fleeces. Isn't that pretty? It feels so soft and smooth. And that is now in this huge bag. I haven't even started spinning any of this yet. There's some more info on there. That is 3 pounds maybe? I don't know, I'd have to check my notes. And then here's another fleece. This is a Romney fleece. And I did start spinning this, and this was also made into roving for me. When you send wool to a mill to be spun, generally many mills like 6 inches or shorter in fiber. If it's too long, it gets caught up on their drum and it doesn't pull off properly. So this was on the longer side, and instead of having to cut it, which I wouldn't have wanted him to do, if he said it wouldn't work in his machines, I would have just taken it back. He said this would have done better as roving for him with his machines than yarn, so he made this into roving for me. It's been spinning up so well. It's so lofty and open. And then some of the things I brought him I had made into yarn. This is one of them. The only thing I have to say, I think whoever operated the mill the day that my fleece was processed, generally mills take forever to do things, so don't anticipate getting things back anytime soon if you drop it off. I want to say this took 4 or 5 months, maybe it was 5 or 6 months, I don't remember, somewhere along there. They had promised it probably for like 4 months and then took another 2 or something like that. I wasn't in a rush. Obviously, I'm not in great need of fiber, but you know, it didn't really matter. So I had it spun in 2 different weights. My intention was to make a sweater for Brad with a thicker weight and a sweater for me with the thinner weight. And this is the thinner weight that I asked for as fingering. But like I said, I think somebody who was operating the mill that day maybe was not having a good day, because this came back as a lace weight, which I didn't even think they spun there, but it's still a very pretty yarn. This is natural color, so it's more like a tan color, and it's in several different skeins. I'm hoping to leave this as the natural color. I don't know how well that looks against my skin tone though. This could have been yarn for Brad to dye, but I just think it's so beautiful and it's natural color. I was thinking of just leaving it alone. And then the other fleece I brought him was a beautiful Romney that I got. I was so happy to have it. And I asked for it to be spun in worsted weight. And now this is probably closer to a fingering weight. So you can see this. It's probably going to bloom a little once I wash it again, but not much. And the person who spun this was probably having a bad day. Maybe they were just learning, I don't know. Because throughout all of these skeins, I have these big slubs of yarn. And I know I'm trying to encourage you to send fiber to a mill if you haven't done it before. This is like the exception to the rule. You generally don't get stuff back that you're not happy with. And this mill is actually very responsible and very nice, because I wrote to him and I said, listen, I'm not really happy with the quality of this spinning. You know, if it were in 1 or 2 skeins, I'd understand, but I have these big monster slubs, like something got caught in the machine or the tension was wrong, throughout the entire skein on everything. So he wrote back and he said that he would definitely take care of it, which I think means he's going to replace this yarn with other yarn. And now I'm kind of like on the fence debating, because normally I'm not too attached to the fleece. I mean, like, I didn't raise the sheep myself, so if he gave me something comparable, it should be fine. But this particular fleece I was in love with, so part of me feels like I want to keep this and just cut out the bad parts. But I don't know, I'm kind of torn. Like, how attached am I really to that sheep? I don't know, but I don't want to make like it's negative. I wanted to do this like it was positive. So if you want to get more involved with the type of wool that you're knitting, you could buy it directly from a farmer. And many of the people that I'm talking about with you sell their wool, but you can find them very easily on Etsy, or some other people that do podcasts raise their own sheep and make their own wool. Or I'll show you people in the future, you know, wool that I like that they produce. And you can buy it directly from the farmer. Sometimes it's not as expensive as you think. A lot of people think that if you do it, you know, this way, it's a fortune. It's not really that bad. So I have to decide if I'm going to keep this and cut out the bad bits or get all new yarn. We shall see, to be determined. At some point on my blog, I'd like to make a list of the different mills in the United States, and then once I get that done, maybe I can make a list of the mills I find in other countries so that you guys have a better resource. Well, I think that's it. I'm looking at my timer here. It looks like I'm just under 40 minutes. All right, not too bad. I'm sorry for stuttering so much and kind of being, I don't know, a little absent-minded today. Do you want to see the fleece behind me too? I love showing you guys stuff. Let's see if I can do this without making the whole tower fall down. This is a natural colored dark Romney that I got at the last fiber festival I went to. I can't remember which one that was. I don't remember the name of it. This is a gorgeous natural color. And it's so springy and clean. And this is what one of the locks looks like. Isn't this so gorgeous? This is a pretty big fleece. Let's see if I can pull out another bit here. If there's any variation between different parts of the animal. But this one's a little tighter and curlier. It's kind of like a dark gray that's got these little tiny streaks of white in it. I shouldn't say streaks, more like almost like a variegated color. Oh, it smells like a sheep. I love it so much. But this is a huge bag. So I have to make a plan with this. What am I going to do with it? Will I spin it in the grease or will I wash it and then spin it? It's so clean that I'm thinking about spinning it in the grease. I can't decide. All right, that's enough show and tell. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, please reach out on the Ravelry group or my YouTube channel or Instagram or anywhere you can find me. And if you've sent me a friend request on Ravelry and I haven't responded to it yet, send me a message or something and nudge me along. Or if you've sent me a message and I haven't responded, sometimes I miss things and I don't want to. I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you or missing out on getting back to you. I'm not doing it intentionally. I'm just a little absent-minded. So if you contact me there or if you contact me on Instagram and I don't respond right away, anything like that, please feel free to like give me another nudge and say, hey, I think you missed this. And I'm happy to respond and make friends. I just want to get to know you guys, and hopefully we'll talk more in the future about fleece if this is interesting to you, and I will talk more about the different breeds and things like that, and we can go visit farmers together. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys next week, and I'll bring you some more knitting. Bye.